Now, the other idea I have for doing centerpieces is to do something different. You know, props. I see some people use these huge stands. Those are wonderful. I had a customer the other day bought several urns to use as a centerpiece for a wedding. I like this though. When I saw it at first, I really thought it was unusual, a little gothic. I love the idea of getting the candles up in the air. And then I thought to myself, what if you use that for a centerpiece, for a table? It's fairly easy to see through. Once again, it's easier to see through than a standard column, right? That's solid, very opaque. And then what we could do is just add color front and back of the arrangement, with arrangement. Here's an example of that diamond stuck on plastic. This is a 4-inch square cube that we have in white and black and clear. So if you want something that's a little less expensive than the glass, and it's already white. Then as well from Smithers Oasis, they have that wonderful bullion. So after I did just a small mounded arrangement, I'm sure we've all done about 1,000 of those, with some blue hydrangeas. Again, I used that brillianthus in white, so I could know for sure how many stems I was going to have. And then just so you know, this is a little different. Some of these smaller white roses is kind of a tea rose, a little bigger than a sweetheart, but smaller than the South American. They're from Africa. One of our growers, there's a shortage of roses right now because we're in that valley after Valentine's Day and going into Mother's Day. So somebody called me and said, well, I have these short stem roses at a very good price. I said, well, where are they from? And he said, from Africa. I said, well, send me a couple boxes. I just want to see them and see how they look. Very nice quality. We have a few left in the cooler, but they are smaller head size. And then just a couple of white mini gerbils. Yes, ma'am.
The name again of the white rose?
The white rose is a tinigi out of Africa.
Is that I-Tineke?
T-I-N-E-K-E. So then again, I just draped the silver bullion from Smithers Oasis. I've added some ribbon. 2 weeks ago, I set up a flyer, and I added all the machined edge ribbon that we have, in number 3, number 9, and number 40. And let me tell you the reason why. I did it because I needed a bolt of ribbon for a corsage. And I grabbed this bolt, the number 3 ribbon, this beautiful sheer with a machined edge, and it was $1.50. I'm like, do people really know that ribbon's only $1.50 for 25 yards? And when it's that inexpensive, shouldn't we put it in everything? Because our customers think that's a great value. You know, oh wow, they added ribbon to that. You know, there's some value added to it. So sometimes when we add things, we're adding it to give the impression that, you know, of more value. You're going to move it. Like for instance, I took this one. This one's $5.50 for 25 yards. And I just used about 4 yards and did some beautiful white sheer in number 40 and the blue sheer, and it came up with just a nice set bow. And it reminded me as I was making the bow, I don't know, some of you, and I know there's a few of you maybe as old as I am or a little bit older, probably remember when we used to do the paper mache containers for our funeral arrangements. And I was talking to the class one time, my class, and they said, why did you put bows and everything? I said, well, because we used the really cheap paper mache container and we had to cover it. So we take the big wide number 40 satin ribbon, make this big bow and put it right on the front, then it covered that ugly paper mache container. And but today, you could use a bow in another sense. You could take a beautiful, and then, look at this container, isn't that great? It's a plastic Revere bowl from Vacuum Ornamental, but you know, very inexpensive, but it looks very rich, doesn't it? Almost looks like you have pewter containers for your customers. And you could take that bowl, pop it right in the middle, and then just add a few blue hydrangeas. Might have to have our technician come in and take a look at that speaker. Now, one thing I can't tell you is how to make hydrangeas last. All I can tell you is, You can't take a hydrangea out of the box and put it in an arrangement, okay? What you really need to do is make sure it gets a good, healthy drink of water. And whatever reservoir you put it in, it needs a good, healthy drink of water. And don't try to put it in some little test tube and go, well, it's in water, it's going to last for 3 days. It's not going to work. It's going to drink as much water as you or I do throughout the day. And for some people, that's a lot of water. So, whatever you use for hydrangea, make sure that it has a good water reservoir. That's the key. And soak it really, really well. And some people say, well, I always cut the stems. I said, well, you know what I do? I not only cut the stems, but I take it and I submerge the whole thing in water. Sometimes as long as overnight. And it's beautiful. It makes it very hard and turgid. And the one thing I know is that the blue tend to hold up a little bit better than the white. And the green tend to hold up the best of all. Crap back there. So anyway, what I was saying is, if you have someone and they're coming to you and they want you to use a flower that you've never used before, I always suggest you buy some of those flowers and use them. Understand what's going to happen. The other thing I hate is, I want this flower, but I don't want it in this color, I want it a shade lighter. So, you know, if you have real strong connections with the man upstairs, maybe you can make sure that those flowers come in the exact right shade. But more often than not, you need to, I think it's important to discuss with the bride what shades it comes in a more plentiful fashion and what shades are going to be a little more risky. And then what you might have to do to ensure that she gets exactly what she wants. In other words, if that mini calla comes in and it's lavender and you need it a little more purple, then you might have to touch it with a little bit of airbrushing to make it what it's going to be. Odds are she's not going to know the difference. She's not even going to see it, but at least you're being honest with her and she knows ahead of time. Because I see so many frustrated people come in at the last minute and they say, well, I needed my Sorbonne lily to be a little lighter pink. It's like, well, it's pink because of the sun, it's for the soil, the time of year. Now, it's a pretty standard pink, but sometimes it's a little richer than at other times. And sometimes they come in and they say, well, I wanted a really big head. And I really love it when I say, I can get these white hydrangeas, you're going to charge me $5.50, and I'm just throwing a number, for jumbo white hydrangeas, but somebody told me they could get really big ones for $1.50. Now, come on, people. We weren't born yesterday. It's not the same thing, right? So let's be honest with you. You know, do you have one? Can I see it? And there was a short time last year, some of you might have run into that problem. I think it was about August, Jerry, when the hydrangeas, for whatever reason, all of a sudden they were like this big. They were as big as tennis balls instead of softballs. And it just happened. No warning, no nothing. And you have orders coming in for hydrangeas that it is a select grade, but unfortunately everything is much smaller. So use the flowers ahead of time. Don't let the bride talk you into something that you know is not right, but talk to her and give her your professional advice, and then you'll be happy and she'll be happy. This next set that you're going to see, David Schroeder put together for us. I think you'll see a version of it in your flyer from Itomi Gilliam in the use of whites and greens. Aren't those fun? Honestly, for the longest time for me, I always thought that the stands you put centerpieces on were always just candle holders, right? And that's what those are, the white candle holders.